Insiders claim the palace didn't announce a crisis, it tried to hide one. Because 2 minutes ago, a message allegedly moved through private channels, like an alarm the king was preparing to sign something tied to succession. Not tomorrow, not under review. Now. And before the ink could dry, the heir and his wife reportedly intervened. Not with speeches, with a hard stop that made even senior aides freeze. Because when succession is touched, it isn't family drama, it's the crown's survival. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Insiders describe the first warning as the kind of message that doesn't spread like gossip, it spreads like panic. Short. Direct. Almost coded. A few words passed through the right hands at the right speed, and suddenly the building's energy changed. Not outwardly, not publicly, not in a way the cameras could catch. But inside, everything tightened. Conversations shortened. Doors closed faster. People began moving with that sharp, careful urgency that only appears when something historic is about to happen and no one wants to be the one who let it leak. The urgency mattered because it wasn't framed as discussion. It was framed as action. A signing. An irreversible step tied to succession, something the monarchy treats as sacred, untouchable, and never impulsive. That's why insiders insist the moment felt explosive even before anyone knew the full details. Because the palace doesn't rush succession matters, unless it believes the alternative is worse. And when a palace believes the alternative is worse, it means fear has entered the decision-making room. Insiders tease the succession adjustment as the most dangerous move possible, not because it's just a legal change, but because it's a signal. It tells the entire institution who matters, who is protected, and who is being repositioned. It reshapes loyalty overnight. It rewrites the story everyone thought was settled. And even the idea of it being attempted 2 minutes ago implies a level of pressure that tradition can't hide. Tradition moves slowly. Panic moves fast. So if the palace was moving fast, insiders say, it wasn't tradition leading. It was survival instinct. That's why the heir and his wife reportedly stepped in. Insiders frame it not as ambition but as forced action, because when a monarch is about to sign something that changes the future, the people who will inherit that future are trapped. If they stay silent, they accept the consequences. If they speak, they risk being seen as challenging the crown. Either choice is dangerous, but insiders claim the heir understood a brutal truth: once ink hits paper, the narrative becomes almost impossible to reverse. So the intervention came as a hard stop, not a debate, not a negotiation. A refusal that made senior aides freeze because they realized they were watching something the palace hates to admit can happen: authority colliding with destiny. And behind that collision, insiders hint the king wasn't moving alone. He was under pressure from competing advisors, competing visions, competing fears. One camp allegedly pushed urgency as protection, framing the signing as necessary to preserve stability. Another camp feared the signing itself would trigger instability, turning private tensions into public crisis. This is the palace's most dangerous battleground, the space where fear pretends to be duty. Because once fear is disguised as duty, it becomes harder to challenge without looking disloyal. The palace fear, insiders suggest, wasn't just about the act of signing. It was about the possibility of the act becoming known. If word leaks that succession was being adjusted, legitimacy cracks. The public begins asking why. The press begins hunting motives. Allies become anxious. Rivals become emboldened. Inside the palace, the rumor machine would ignite, and once it ignites around succession, it doesn't die quietly. That's why the palace allegedly tried to hide the crisis rather than announce it. Announcing it invites questions. Hiding it buys time. But hiding it also creates the worst kind of vulnerability, the kind where one person can leak a fragment and control the whole story. Insiders say that's why the moment felt like an alarm. Not because everyone knew what was being changed, but because everyone understood the category of the change. Succession is the spine of the monarchy. Touch the spine, and every other part of the body reacts. Staff become cautious, advisors become territorial, family members become symbols. And symbols don't get to relax, they get placed. The cliffhanger is the one insiders keep circling, because it's the question that makes everything else make sense. What exactly was the king about to change, and why right now? Because right now implies urgency. It implies a trigger. It implies someone pushed the situation to a point where delaying felt impossible. And if the heir truly blocked it in the final moments, it means he believed the signing wasn't just controversial. It was dangerous enough to stop no matter the personal cost. But to understand why the heir would dare block a monarch, you have to rewind to the quiet pressure campaign that made succession feel negotiable. Insiders claim it didn't start as a coup. It started as concern. A few briefings, a few carefully planted doubts, a few conversations framed as tradition, stability, and what's best for the nation. But inside the palace, concern can be a disguise for control. And when the same concerns repeat across different mouths, it stops sounding like coincidence. It starts sounding like coordination, quiet, polite, and dangerous. Insiders say the earliest signs were almost polite in their wording. Nobody called it a plan. Nobody called it a power move. They called it responsibility. They called it prudence. They called it protecting continuity. And that's how narrative building works inside royal walls. You dress ambition in duty, so nobody can accuse you without sounding reckless. Instead of saying, "We want change," you say, "We're worried." Instead of saying, "We don't trust the current path," you say the public may be confused. And once the palace starts using public confusion as a shield, it becomes nearly impossible to prove intent. The concerns reportedly followed a pattern. Insiders describe the same phrases appearing in different conversations, from different people, with the same emotional framing, always urgent, always protective, always conveniently vague. That repetition matters, because when multiple voices begin echoing one message, it stops being an opinion, it becomes a campaign. A slow, controlled escalation designed to make one outcome feel inevitable while making any resistance look irresponsible. Soon, competing camps emerged. One camp pushed modern stability, keep the line clear, keep trust high, avoid anything that feels like manipulation. The other camp leaned toward old guard control tradition as a weapon, hierarchy as protection, and change as something that can be engineered if you do it quietly enough. Insiders say these camps weren't always obvious in public. In public, everyone looked united. Behind closed doors, however, unity became a performance. And when unity becomes performance, the real decisions move into smaller rooms. The heir's household began noticing unusual interference, insiders claim, in small, subtle ways. A schedule suggestion that didn't feel like a suggestion. A private briefing that arrived through an unexpected channel. A sudden interest in who would attend which engagement. A quiet request for information that normally wouldn't be requested. Nothing blatant. Just enough to make the heir's team feel watched. Just enough to make them wonder if someone was mapping influence, counting allies, measuring access, preparing the ground for a shift. Insiders suggest the king was pulled in two directions at once: compassion on one side, institutional pressure on the other. Because a monarch can have personal instincts, but a monarch also sits inside a system that knows how to apply force politely. For the good of the country. To protect the crown. To calm the public. Those phrases sound noble, but they can also be used to corner a decision-maker. The king, insiders say, was made to feel that delaying action was itself dangerous, that hesitation would invite instability, that leaving the line untouched could somehow be framed as weakness. When a king is pushed into believing that waiting is reckless, signing becomes easier. This is where the wife's role starts to matter, insiders claim. Not loud, not confrontational. Strategic, calm, observant. The kind of person who listens more than she speaks, and therefore hears what others miss. Insiders suggest she noticed the coordination first, not through scandalous proof, but through pattern recognition. Who kept repeating which fears? Who used the same wording? Who showed up to the same informal discussions? Who suddenly became interested in process? In a palace, process is where power hides. Anyone obsessed with process is usually trying to control outcome. And as these concerns grew, the palace atmosphere reportedly changed. The conversation stopped being theoretical. It stopped being "we should consider" and became "we must prepare." Insiders say that's the most dangerous stage when preparation begins, because preparation creates momentum. Once people believe something is coming, they start behaving as if it's already decided. They start aligning. They start making small moves that only make sense if the big move is inevitable. And that's how coups happen, without anyone calling them coups. The cliffhanger is the trigger incident, the moment the palace stopped treating it as discussion and started treating it as action. Insiders keep it intentionally vague, but emotionally specific. Something surfaced at the wrong time, in the wrong place. A piece of information that made the old guard camp claim urgency. A detail that could be used to justify signing now instead of later. And once that trigger landed, it gave the campaign what it needed most: a reason to stop talking and start doing. And when that trigger hit, the palace didn't schedule a debate, it scheduled a decision. Insiders claim one event changed everything: small enough to avoid headlines, big enough to shake the inner circle. A private detail surfaced in the wrong place. A draft memo appeared where it shouldn't. A briefing line leaked before it was approved. And suddenly the palace realized the unthinkable: succession wasn't being protected, it was being played with. That's when tomorrow turned into tonight, and the king was told there was only one safe option: sign now. Insiders say the trigger didn't look dramatic from the outside. No sirens, no public scramble, just a quiet rupture inside the system. A piece of information that shouldn't exist in the open suddenly appearing where it could be seen, repeated, misused. A draft. A briefing line. A calendar detail that revealed planning before permission had been granted. Small enough to hide. Big enough to prove internal access and deliberate steering. And once that proof existed, the palace stopped debating theory and started fearing intent. Because the most terrifying possibility wasn't that succession might be adjusted, it was that someone inside the palace had begun treating succession like a tool. A lever. A pressure point to move influence from one camp to another. Insiders claim that's what made senior figures go cold. If a draft memo can appear in the wrong hands, it implies a pipeline. If a briefing line can leak early, it implies coordination. And if coordination exists around succession, it means the crown's most sacred structure isn't just vulnerable, it's being manipulated. That's when the king's advisors, insiders say, pushed urgency with language that sounded noble but felt sharp. They framed it as protection, not power. Sign now to stop instability. Sign now to prevent rumors. Sign now to close loopholes before they become headlines. The message was clear: the palace must act fast, because if it delays, it looks weak. But urgency is a weapon when it's used to corner a monarch. And insiders suggest that's exactly what made the moment so dangerous: fear dressed up as duty. The heir saw it differently. Insiders claim he read the rush as sabotage, not necessarily sabotage of the king, but sabotage of legitimacy itself. Because legitimacy doesn't survive when decisions are made under panic. It survives when process is respected, when steps are clear, when the public story aligns with internal truth. And if someone was pressuring the king into signing tonight because a draft had leaked, the heir understood the trap: the palace would be choosing speed over credibility. Once credibility cracks, succession becomes a question mark. And question marks don't vanish, they spread. Staff panic reportedly followed, but not the kind of panic that looks chaotic. The controlled kind. Notes suddenly handled by fewer people. Rooms restricted without explanation. Protocol changes whispered into place. Briefings shortened. Security tightened. Insiders say the building itself felt like it was holding its breath, because everyone could sense the time pressure. If the signing happened, the future would be set. If it didn't, the palace would have to admit something had almost happened. Either outcome carried risk, and risk is the one thing the palace cannot tolerate being visible. Then came the moment that turned the ticking clock into a sprint. The heir learned the signing was imminent and moved. Not tomorrow, not after a polite conversation. Now, because if ink touches paper, the argument becomes history. And history is the one courtroom where the palace wins by controlling the narrative first. Because when the heir walks into a room like that, he's not entering a meeting, he's entering a battlefield. Insiders claim the heir didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He allegedly delivered one sentence that changed the room's temperature, not like this. Because it wasn't just the change, it was the method. A rushed signature, a pressured monarch, a decision made under fear. And the moment he blocked the process, the palace felt something terrifying. The future of the crown had just challenged the present authority of it. Insiders say his stance was framed carefully: legitimacy protection, not rebellion. He wasn't saying the king couldn't decide. He was saying the decision couldn't be forced through panic and pressure. Because once the public senses a monarch was cornered into signing, the institution doesn't look stable. It looks manipulated. And if the institution looks manipulated, it invites doubt not just about the decision, but about everything the palace claims to represent. The king, insiders say, was torn in a way no camera could capture: fatherly instinct versus the voices insisting that duty requires speed, advisors pushing urgency, the heir demanding procedure, the room splitting into camps without anyone openly choosing sides. And in that tension, even silence became political. Who speaks? Who stays quiet? Who looks down at the papers? Who looks at the heir? Who looks at the king? Then the wife's presence changed the shape of the confrontation. Insiders describe her as calm, firm, and strategically still, the opposite of chaos. She didn't argue like someone seeking attention. She stood like someone who understood that this moment would be remembered, and that every reaction would be used later as evidence of motive. Her calm became its own message: we are not panicking, therefore you should not be signing in panic. The real fight, insiders say, wasn't about emotions. It was about procedure, credibility, and who controls the narrative of the crown's future. Staff witnessed shock in the smallest ways: frozen faces, clipped responses, rapid exits from aides, who suddenly realized they were standing too close to history. Because if the heir blocks the pen, it means the monarchy is not just a family, it is a system in conflict with itself. And then the ultimatum surfaced like a blade sign anyway, or trigger a public fracture. In other words, choose speed and risk legitimacy, or choose caution and risk looking divided. That's the trap the palace hates most, because both options carry damage. And when both options carry damage, the palace searches for a third option: control. And that's when the wife makes the move everyone underestimated, because she doesn't fight with emotion, she fights with structure. Insiders claim the wife didn't argue about feelings, she argued about process. Because in a palace, you don't defeat a power play with outrage, you defeat it with rules. She allegedly demanded the legal basis, the council notes, the approvals, the constitutional steps. And suddenly the room that felt unstoppable started stalling. Because when you force people to show their paperwork, you force them to reveal their motive. Insiders say the heir changed the moment she asked for specifics. Not dramatic specifics, paper specifics. Who authored the draft? Which council signed off? Which approvals were secured? Which steps were completed? Which steps were being skipped? Because there's a difference between a decision and a shortcut, and shortcuts are where power hides when it's trying not to be seen. The people pushing sign now wanted momentum. She wanted structure. And structure is the one thing urgency can't fake. That's where the weak points began to show. Missing approvals that were assumed. Council notes that were rushed, thin, or conveniently vague. Authority that sounded absolute until someone asked for the exact basis. Insiders claim the signing plan started losing momentum in real time, not because anyone admitted wrongdoing, but because questions multiply faster than excuses. Each answer created another question. Each attempt to close the conversation opened a new gap. And a gap inside a palace is dangerous because it hints at intent. The advisors pushing urgency reportedly panicked. Not outwardly, palace panic is quiet, but in their tone, in their insistence, in their sudden shift from protection language to accusation language. Insiders claim the wife was accused of politicizing the moment, as if asking for procedure was itself a threat. But that accusation revealed the truth: procedure was the obstacle. Because if everything was clean, procedure would be easy. If everything was legitimate, paperwork would be ready. The resistance to paperwork was the motive. The heir backed her immediately, insiders say, forming a united front that changed the balance of the room. Not a loud alliance, a clear one. The kind that tells everyone watching this isn't one person being difficult. This is the future insisting on credibility. And that's what made the room feel uncertain. Because the palace is trained to obey the present authority of the crown, but it also fears the future authority of it. When the heir and his wife stand together under pressure, the question becomes terrifyingly simple: who leads when legitimacy is at stake? Staff sensed that shift like a tremor. The palace was no longer sure who was steering the moment. The king, caught between advisors and his heir, became the center of the storm without moving. The advisors tried to keep urgency alive. The heir tried to slow the pen. The wife tried to expose the scaffolding holding the whole plan up. And once the scaffolding showed cracks, everyone understood what was really happening. The room wasn't debating a change. It was debating whether the change was being forced through fear. That's when the fight jumped tracks. Because if the palace couldn't win behind doors, insiders say it did what it always does: when blocked by process, it shifted to optics. And optics move faster than paperwork. Optics can be planted. Optics can be framed. Optics can be weaponized with a single well-timed whisper. Insiders claim a new wave of whispers hit immediately, carefully timed, carefully framed, designed to make the heir look controlling and his wife look ambitious. Not accusations, questions. Not proof, concern. Because if you can't sign the papers, you can still poison the optics. And optics are the palace's currency. The goal wasn't to convince everyone. It was to create enough doubt that the king could sign for stability. That's how narratives get built in royal life. Insiders say selective anecdotes, anonymous briefings, vague sources close to the situation, repeating the same lines until repetition feels like truth. Staff loyalty tests intensified overnight, paranoia spread. People began wondering who was feeding what, and why now. The king felt pressure from both sides: act and look decisive, or hesitate and look weak. The heir refused interviews and refused public sparring, choosing instead to fight through internal controls, approvals, and tightened channels, because he understood something: brutal public chaos is exactly what the rival camp wanted. And the wife became the target because she was the barrier. She wasn't the loudest voice. She was the structure that stopped the pen. She was the person who forced motive into the light by demanding process. And once motive is at risk of exposure, the easiest counterattack is always the same: make the person demanding truth look like the problem. The cliffhanger, insiders say, was the palace's next proposed solution: a forced unity event meant to bury the conflict in one clean image, one staged calm, one nothing to see here moment. Because if you can't win the paperwork war, you try to win the perception war. But forced unity is a dangerous gamble, because it doesn't heal fractures. It exposes them. Insiders claim the palace tried to end the story with one clean image togetherness, calm, nothing to see here. But the public has learned the palace's oldest trick: perfection. The more perfect unity looks, the more people search for what it's hiding. And if a succession struggle is real, a staged smile doesn't erase it. It confirms it. Because cameras don't just capture faces, they capture distance. Inside the palace, the debate reportedly turned ruthless in its calm. Do you soothe speculation with one controlled appearance, or do you validate the rumors by reacting too hard, too fast? Because the palace knows silence can look like guilt, but it also knows performance can look like panic. That's why insiders say every word, every step, every timing decision became loaded. It wasn't just an appearance. It was a message to the nation: the monarchy is steady. The monarchy is united. The monarchy is not in crisis. But when the palace tries to communicate stability with perfection, it risks doing the opposite. Because perfection is the scent of pressure. Strategic placement became political in a way the public would never fully notice, but insiders would read instantly. Who stands closest to the king? Who is placed near the heir? Who is positioned beside the wife? Who is kept at a polite distance? And more importantly, who is absent? Absence in royal life is never neutral. It's a statement disguised as scheduling. Insiders claim advisors argued about the smallest details because they understood a harsh truth: one photograph can reset an entire narrative, or ignite it into something worse. But the heir, insiders say, refused performance without procedural clarity. Not because he wanted to embarrass anyone, but because he understood the trap. If he smiles too easily in a staged unity shot, he looks complicit in whatever nearly happened. If he looks too serious, he confirms something is wrong. Either way, the image becomes evidence for someone else's story. That's why he allegedly insisted on one thing behind closed doors: no staged calm until the process is clean. No unity theatre until the rules are respected. Because once the palace performs unity while procedure is still compromised, it doesn't look united. It looks managed. The king was pressured to appear decisive, insiders say, because indecision is the one thing the monarchy fears being seen. A decisive monarch projects control. A hesitant monarch invites doubt. And in the middle of a suspected succession dispute, doubt is gasoline. That pressure wasn't only external. It was internal voices urging the king to close the chapter, to restore calm, to show leadership. But leadership under pressure can become theatre, and theatre is exactly what the palace was being accused of. Then came the coldest part of the plan: a scapegoat selected to solve the leak problem. Not because the palace always needs someone to blame, but because it always needs an explanation that doesn't implicate the institution itself. Insiders suggest this is where the palace becomes most dangerous, when it chooses efficiency over fairness. Someone is reassigned. Someone is removed from key rooms. Someone becomes the quiet cost of restoring calm. The public never hears the name, but the household feels the message: control will be restored, even if someone has to disappear for it. The cliffhanger insiders whisper about is the cruel irony: someone is sacrificed, and the signing plan resurfaces anyway. Because sacrifice doesn't fix motive. It doesn't erase the existence of the plan. It doesn't stop the people who wanted it. It only proves how desperate the palace is to keep the mask intact. And once desperation is visible inside the building, it doesn't vanish. It evolves. And once that sacrifice is made, the monarchy enters its most dangerous phase: the cleanup. Insiders say the palace believed it was managing a constitutional detail. Then it realized it was managing a power shift. Because the moment the heir stopped the pen, the question changed from what's legal to who commands the future. The chilling twist, they claim, is that someone inside wanted the conflict visible, wanted the heir tested, wanted the king pressured, wanted the public to adjust without being told they were adjusting. The consequences came fast, insiders say, and they weren't theatrical, they were structural. Trust fractured in rooms that once relied on quiet loyalty. The inner circle shrank permanently because too many people had seen too much, or heard too much, or suspected too much. When a palace faces a legitimacy threat, it doesn't broaden its circle. It tightens it. And tightening a circle always leaves someone outside, staring at a door they used to walk through freely. Motives began clashing in whispers: protection, revenge, leverage, fear. Protection, from those claiming the monarchy needed decisive action to remain stable. Revenge, from those who saw this as an opportunity to weaken rivals and reshape influence. Leverage, from those who understood that succession is power in its purest form. Fear, from those who believed that if the heir couldn't be controlled, the future could become unpredictable. Insiders suggest the scariest part is that all these motives can exist at once without a single mastermind. The palace can become a machine that produces conflict simply because everyone is trying to survive within it. The king's public posture hardened as a result, calmer, colder, more controlled, because he needed the nation to feel stability even if he felt pressure. But insiders claim private guilt deepened, because no monarch wants history to remember a moment where the crown nearly looked negotiable. Meanwhile, the heir's authority strengthened not through shouting, but through restraint and structure. He didn't win by making noise, he won by insisting the rules mattered more than urgency. That insistence becomes power in a palace, because it signals discipline, and discipline is what the institution respects most. And the wife emerged as a strategic force, drawing lines without shouting. Insiders say she became the proof that the future of the monarchy isn't only inherited, it's defended. Not with emotion, but with process. Not with conflict, but with clarity. And once she stepped into that role, the palace understood something unsettling. This wasn't a temporary stand. It was a new balance forming in real time. The final cliffhanger is the one insiders leave hanging like a threat. The monarchy looks united, but the private fracture is irreversible. Because once a pen is stopped, everyone remembers who tried to move it and who refused. Once a crisis is managed through sacrifice and cleanup, trust doesn't return easily. It becomes cautious. It becomes strategic. It becomes quiet. And quiet, in a palace, is never empty. Quiet is where the next move is being planned. And if the heir truly stopped a succession change minutes before it happened, the next chapter won't be about tradition, it'll be about who the crown can trust when the doors close again. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.